Good afternoon, YouTube. Good afternoon. How you doing, family? Hi. Good afternoon. I want to come here and expound on a few subjects again. Thank you for listening. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd like you to hit the like button. You guys are watching me and listening. Thank you so much, community. We do need to be supportive to each other. So, ADOS, how you doing? ADOS. I also want to talk about Farrakhan being blocked from Facebook. Yeah. So we know Facebook, okay? We know Facebook has the history of blocking content from black people, talking about race issues and the powers that be and so forth, and our integrity, our prestige, our history, things like that. And they came out with a word, I think about 2 years ago, or maybe a little bit more. And you remember that term was Black identity extremist. And this is the reason why they do this. These people are afraid of us. They're literally afraid of us. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of black prestige. They're afraid for black constituency among each other. They are even afraid of us knowing where we come from in terms of our prestige, because they have basically pretty much diluted the system up to false educate and basically say that they teaching white contribution, other contribution from other groups, and there's a lot of people that have joined the United States in terms of constituency to the powers that be, to be a part of them and access whiteness and further oppress the descendants of slavery in this country. This is clean and pure and precise. We see it. So they're afraid of us. And, we have to know that they're afraid of a people of prestige. I mean, and some would be shocked that I even said that as a black person. But why wouldn't I when it's true? Well, they subjected us to be a certain people and perpetuated the image of non-intellectual, non-articulate, sort of below this line of being sophisticated, just to basically continue to oppress and kind of keep a bunch of greedy power floating around in terms of who we are and how we exist. And it's against us. And they don't want us to come in contact because these people are actually really afraid of us. But for what reason? Why would you be afraid of a people that you basically enslaved and outpowered and been brutal against and infamous against, of acts of racism and hatred and redlining? Why would you be afraid of a people like that? Why would you be afraid of us? We have no history of harming white folks. Why would you be afraid of us? Well, Farrakhan mentioned this years ago when he was on Donahue about white people being afraid of us or other groups being afraid of us. That basically what they're doing is they're being afraid of the fact that if we ever come to a certain power, we would do the same thing they done to us. That's pretty delusional thinking, actually, because that's not the necessary mind of a black person. And Farrakhan expounded on that when I was a kid on Donahue, on the talk show. My mother was in there cooking donuts for me, and I was watching the show, and then I watched it again later on and again. Because this is what I do. I do assessments on this stuff, and I listen in closely. And he had to explain to a white audience and a black audience where it has been divided by the people that came before the show, whites on whites on one side, blacks on the other, and telling these white people that are basically saying Farrakhan is there to divide and he's speaking separatism because he's speaking up for his people, the people that have been wronged. The people that have been wronged, he's speaking up for the descendants of slavery in this country. And they were saying stuff because they basically, as a group, are all on code. They don't want this to happen. They've been taught and born and bred that we as a people should not have a voice. And we should be socially dismantled, socially oppressed, economically oppressed, and further redlined. Not only by white power, but other groups who have come in here and built constituency with them. This is what has happened. So under all of this as a conspiracy, the Jews and the Italians, anybody who can access whiteness, Now, this is not about whether you're a racist person in yourself, but it's a system, a power source that you exist from. This is not about somebody tagging on to me saying, oh, I'm not racist, and, I don't feel that way. Unfortunately, your group has presented you in that light, So you exist from a source of a system and community that represents racism in terms of its history and how it exchanges. So you can practice that. Racism is a word that came from race. It points to one who has won the race, and what they can practice is now racism. That word came in after the race was over, when whites, enslaved blacks, and then the French, and then other islands, and the British. Actually, the whites won, so to speak, like that. So racism became a thing. Okay, so a lot of folks don't know that how strategic that is and how it's put in form. So these people are afraid, and I'll tell you, us as black folks have a lot of rich, prestigious history in terms of us being patterners, inventors, great scholars, great writers, people of integrity who built this system and its moral compass. Not just the system, but also its moral compass, where we have gotten things in effect that all people benefit from in a space of benevolence. I mean, they benefit from it in a space of opportunity for their lives. So this is what we have done, and we have been writers and people that are educated in beautiful spaces that a lot of immigration don't even know who they are. It would be a joke. They don't even know the history on that. And a lot of us and other people that are anchored in this country historically don't even have the awareness of who we are because of what conspiracy we were under in terms of education. So we've been miseducated also. And as we grow, we're constantly learning who we are. Right now, today, we're learning exactly who we are. And this is the real interesting thing about us. And we are people that have been in a very powerful space for the integrity of this country, for the integrity of the world. We, the American descendant of slavery. And so they don't want to know that because they're afraid of us. They're afraid of us. And it's very clear to me as I go forth, I see it more and more. Because the history that we have here is so rich and beautiful, and what it really takes, and we're so beautiful, it really takes unity. But we're so beautiful and so powerful people. We have ideology that's very philosophical, and that's what actually separates us. Because we don't know how to be in one agenda because we have adopted so many cultures out throughout looking for our blackness, and we come under so many different titles. And that's what we're doing now, is trying to just put everybody together so we can rectify carefully and strategically. So therefore we are putting the history right, that we can go forth in terms of business and political realm. And that means getting our inheritance. It's due. So therefore it sets a precipice of how we should move and how we can move in terms of the law. It's very important. So we need to understand, and we need to continue to grow and understand that we are people that have been basically desocialized in terms of a group of ourselves for the very thing that you probably can't believe, and that's because we are powerful. I mean, if you can take people and make them slaves or subject them to servitude, so to speak, and they become powerful enough to create a engine for you of wealth, and not only of wealth, of laws and of prestige and moral compass, teaching you how to keep yourself clean, how to keep your chickens at your house, and forth cooking, and basically learning to read and write, even though they were told not to be educated, being the first people to bring the integrity in the White House, Not only that, being in servitude to build a nation, backbreaking, blood sacrifice, and then on top of that, the best scholars, the best pianists, the best, singers or dancers and writers, even the Hidden Colors. Remember the movie where the three ladies who did the math of how to get the spaceship and the numbers so that they can actually come into the space and make and execute the travel to space. And they hid that, and that came out in a movie. And then you had the Green Book, and it came out in a movie, whereas though that was the Shirley guy, who was a great pianist. I mean, things like that, where we're still coming in contact with who we are. And these are the spaces where the powers that be and the oppressors were subjecting slaves to a certain space, or people that were descendants of slaves, which is us. And we gave them a prestige and a moral compass to go by, like they were underlings. And this is the hiding. They're hiding this because they don't want to basically have to reckon with their own community and tell their children, well, blacks did this and blacks did that. And blacks are who the one did this. And this was a black man, because they feel the power. They're afraid that they will lose access to power. They will lose access to being a people that have been socially designed to be in control, when blacks are actually prestigious and a leadership type of people. So they don't want us to have that kind of legacy, but we do. And they're afraid of us. And they think if we come to power, we would do the same thing they did. And that's not the necessary mind of a black person. We don't want to enslave them. We want to be on an equal playing field, but they know the nature of a black person is dominant. Not only we have a birthright to be dominant, that if you have any intellectual with any sex or whatever with another person or relation, that child or whoever, there's going to be black people. We can reproduce physically, scientifically. We have a birthright in that perspective. And then also mentally, socially, and spiritually, we're also dominant people. So they don't want us to come into a space of access of capital, because they're literally afraid, which can be constituted as childish, actually, if you really want to look at it. But it's not, because it's affecting us systematically. And it's a very powerful, strategic, sophisticated engine that we have been in the apparatus of it. So it's affecting us, and it's a crime being committed. And that's why reparations is important. Now, I want to expound a little bit on reparations, because a lot of people that are coming up with great ideas in terms of black, ADOS or whoever, are people, they have to understand we have to have reparations. Reparations is not the illusion of your thought or what you think it is necessarily. It is what it is. Reparations are widespread. It is a check, but it's a widespread. It's more sophisticated than you just getting a check. It covers it protects you. It's protects your rights and how you exchange in terms of business. And a lot of people want to jump on board and get in business without being rectified under a capital that they exist, which is the United States government, the first world. So if we see Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore have the right idea. We have to be rectified in terms of government policy and the law, and we deserve it. And the reason other groups have already done this is because they realize how important it is. They have not been locked out of the room. They have not been locked out on this, because they basically have built constituency with the powers that be. And they also know we are dominant people. We have been studied and constantly being studied. And what they want us to do is believe and become receptive to the fact that we're only people of servitude, and that's not true. It's far from it. It's very clear to us, and it's offensive according to who we are and what we have done for this society. So we're talking about getting IOPs, people jumping on board trying to get businesses. You got Dr. Umar Johnson talking about getting a school. But the laws have not been protected in which we set out to due diligence in these spaces. When we set out to go out and do these things, getting ILPs in business, it's not necessarily guaranteed it's going to be a success according to how we exist under government policy in terms of the law. And that's where reparations fall in. That's why it's foremost important. And we have to have reparations to be able to come into that space more effectively. We need to be orderly, neatly and methodically arranged. It needs to be in order. So order comes from the head. You know, like they say, if you get the head, the such and such a follow. So you have to go in order, neatly and more methodically arranged. So we have to go in order. It's not about you jumping up doing something out of order because now you have no protection. So you have to have protection. This is how it exists. This is how laws exist. This is how political umbrella exists. A democracy, a sophisticated democracy that we built and that we patronize in terms of our thinking, our intellectual presence, our prestige, and our back-breaking physical form as chattel slavery. And also in the sufferings that we have suffered in terms of brutalization and wars we fought, to put things in perspective of the moral compass of our system so that we can benefit and so that it can be a more beneficial environment for people in a very humanitarian way. So this is who we are. And now that we're talking about reparations, folk tend to get offended because they don't understand. And it's very dangerous when you're dealing with people uneducated in power. We have a power source that a lot of people are uneducated and all they really want is to constantly reign in power. The police, basically the police is a government entity that carry guns. So if you are misinformed about a people and uneducated and you're killing unarmed black people and they're not remembered in a sophisticated, not a sophisticated, but a respectful, prestigious space in the society, and you're doing this, and you got people like Colin Kaepernick kneeling before the flag and get pulled apart, that's a problem. You got people that are ADOS people that are sitting in prison for things that white people have done that are on probation, like Bill Cosby. You got people like Oprah Winfrey put in schools in Africa and been redlined out of putting schools in our own system to protect our own people as it pertains to herself. This is how transparent this is. And in terms of that happening, we have to realize and understand the minds of our people have been colonized and we are reconditioning. We are reconditioning. And we're centering around something very dear to us. And we have to have reparations. We have to get the check cut. We have to rectify in terms of government. Political umbrella. Political science is your life. Just like Yvette Cornell said, we have to do that because anything we set out to do, we are up against a power source. And other groups are protected because they went to the head, and that's the government. This is a government issue that oversee the wealth of billionaires and millionaires and how they move, how they exchange in terms of business and in capital. So we have to be respected in that space and getting laws rectified so that we can be remembered and respected there. You have to follow the chain of command. And this is important. And so why not do it now? Why? Oh, well, let's just get an IOP and start a business, and let's just do it this way, and let's just do it that way. And Dr. Umar want to get a school, but he hasn't done business. Okay, you got donations, you pay for a building. What about the laws that are in place in terms of how that school is going to exist, how it moves? What about getting the trust of people in a business sense, in a business status? What about that? What about the tax dollars and how much money you need for certain engines to run around your empire, which is a black school? And we definitely need education in terms of our blackness, because if you don't know who you are or where you come from, you're not going to know where you're going. And we need to know that we're powerful and prestigious people so that we can be proud of that history and go forth. But if we just buy into a social illusion and just grasping everything, and other groups are believing that they are they are the contribution of our society, then they are the ones encouraged and not us. We have to all be encouraged, and that's what we mean by equal playing field. So I understand we need to be educated, and we need our own system to teach us, because we have a very rich history that they also are afraid of. And that's why I promote Piney Woods Boarding School in Mississippi. And a lot of people may not know about that. I mentioned it on one of my talks before. Mary Jane McLeod Bethune's niece is the director of the Cotton Blossoms there. My sisters went there, my cousin. And this is what a school that is very high curricular in terms of blackness. And people have endorsed the school. Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey have gave something. You know, and I hate to bring that up because what she gave to that school was embarrassing. So she was all about, you know, running around trying to access power, and she so-called did, but they did not treat her right necessarily. And she forgot her dignity in terms of her community and herself. And you are nothing without your family. When you're above family, you are too high up, and sometimes the fall can be fatal. You have to remember there's a balance, and you just can't get carried away when you come from slaves. Oprah, you came from slaves. So you can't just throw around and go around without being used as, you know, basically reading this last book or whatever she wrote and the 60-minute thing. It's all a situation now. And we have looked at a show, and that's not how billionaires move in terms of being in a wealthy exchange. So what that means is that she have obtained wealth, but she's not wealthy. She's obtained a rich and a wealthy salary, but she can't move in a wealthy space because she's up against a power source that she catered to, that she allowed herself to be a apparatus for in terms of promoting and pushing goods and things like that, because that space was there. And this is what happens when you don't have community and your laws are not protected. And people that come from the space you come can't reflect in that same space because of the of a system in a democracy of laws. That's what Yvette Carnell understands and Antonio Moore. That's why I say they have the right idea. It's very strategic and precise, and it comes in at the first thing. And this is what we need to do. We need to be repaired. We need to be reformed in reparations, because this is how America moves. Basically, any situation you have to come in the right way. And I think that's what we bought into. Basically, I'm not going to say I think. I know that because my assessment tells us we bought into social illusion, and we are no longer going to patronize the idea of that. We're going to move forward and be rectified and remembered the right way so that we can build. And we do need schools and stuff like that. But if we get reparations, we can endorse, we can invest, we can have a tangible exchange. We can transfer wealth in terms of empire and facility, and facilitate things for ourselves so that we can be more accessible and more effective for our own good in terms of community, in terms of a community. This is what we can do. We already have the intellectual, we have the prestigious minds already within us in our intellect. However, we've been mishandled and destabilized in this space intellectually throughout abuse, denial, neglect, especially of our inheritance. When a people is misplaced from something that they need to exist, they're not going to function on a level of sophistication necessarily. Now, we've built communities and things like that, and we see what happened to that. So we have to be respected in this space. So Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore have the right idea. We need reparations, and we need to be remembered in terms of government policy, and then we need to anchor ourselves in a different anchor. They cannot They cannot really fix us internally, according to what has happened due to us being in that space, being redlined out of important spaces. But we can start by rectifying in terms of government. But we have to do that together. We can't do it apart. And unity is what's important. But black people are so smart. Until we've got ideology on so many different levels, it creates a divisive form of energy against ourselves. Where we got different religions, and I'm not talking about religions. Pan-Africanists, Nation of Islam, even Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't even do religion. I mean, the church, Christianity, and then we got the Hebrew Israelites. I'm just saying that we have a very philosophic intellect. We're not dumb. So we are special people. And they all go on one way because they know it works. And what we need to do, we have to digress to progress. And we have to come into unity to be on one accord, because unity is the identity of something. I mean, in terms of a group, you cannot have a group identity without unity. If you're in unity with your family, then that's a family. And if you're by yourself, you are automatically in unity, you're with yourself. Unless something's wrong with you where your mind is not stable, then you're not basically unified in terms of self and intellect, and all that stuff is off. But in terms of a group, I went into a science then, I'm sorry. But in terms of a group, unity is foremost how you exist. And that's a power source. That's important. You have to have that. That's the face of who you are. And because we got so many different things going on, and we're doing the advocacy and reckoning, we reconditioning that so we can move in unity. That's power. We have to be one nation under God, liberty, and justice for all. Unity. So it's okay that we're talking and we're doing this, but don't forget that we are one people, and we have adopted so many cultures. Other people have been able to finesse us in these spaces, and they get on board with our culture. Pan-Africanists is using against us that we can't be ADOS because we're Pan-Africanists and we're patronizing the Africans. Well, that's where a lot of us came from in terms of our ancestors. So we made that. We made Marcus Garvey. We made Malcolm X. We rallied behind all these great leaders and scholars and black power people so that they can actually reign in their black leaderships, in terms of for the greater good. So we are these people. We are ADOS. We are the American descendant of slavery, and it's a lot of us. So we are a threat. But why? I don't know why would we be a threat to them, because they're afraid of losing something that they never had, or losing some lie that they promoted, that they were the contribution of this society, and promoting these statues of people that oppressed us. And we don't need to be looking at that as a nation that have come to another space of freedom. That's no moral compass. We have introduced moral compass, and we're introducing more moral compass to the diaspora and to the laws of our system. And first and foremost, we have to be remembered in that space as a moral compass. We have to be remembered in a space where you remember people, and that's our inheritance. You remember people there for a reason. For a reason. They exist, actually. They have their money there. They have their property. They exist. If you don't give people what they have, they can just die. I mean, if you got people working for you at a job and they don't never get paid, what they gonna eat? How they gonna pay their bills? Now, that's in a bigger, more broad perspective in terms of a system. So we have to be remembered in terms of a system. We live in a democracy of a nation of race of people, of a nation of a people in terms of groups, even though we are in one place. So we have to be in that space. We cannot go without being in that space, because we'll be all over the place and destabilized. And that's what they don't want us to know. They don't want us to come into any unity. So what they're doing is removing people that even speak in terms of exposing them on these levels. That's why Farrakhan was removed from Facebook. Not because we already in unity, is because he speak up for the well-being and the prestige of black folk. I mean, he's not. A lot of people saying he's like T.D. Jakes, but let me tell you, he's a voice of a black man that has a lot of ears, for one. And if you get ready to say something that we all can benefit from, it can cause a trickle-down effect. He can jump on the team or something. He's a threat to them. And there's no excuse. He shouldn't be. Now, us as a people, we have to remember that unity is important, and we can reckon, we can condition, and that's what we have been doing, and it's working. I mean, I believe in divine existence, so it's no shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I do believe in divine existence. That's another spiritual example of who I am and what I believe. Divine existence is very powerful. You have to start from where you are and go forward. And that's what I choose to do. You can't always go back and say, oh, let's do. No, you pick up from where you at and you go forward. Everything is where it should be, so to speak, but not. You have to understand that and use discretion in that. So we do need reparations. And we are going to get them. And we're going to get them by unity and by us bringing ourselves to a more compass of respect for each other and being on an equal playing field, of being on the same agenda. But we have a lot of iota, we have a lot of philosophy because of who we are. We built the nation, and we set a moral compass for a nation. We set in laws that other people come from thousands and thousands of miles all across the world to be a part of. And we, the descendants of slaves, have set an example throughout sufferings and wars to get this place to be in its shape. And we have been financially and socially oppressed and denied. And that's not acceptable on any level. We have to be corrected because we're important people to be respected and moving forth. We deserve our inheritance, and we need to move forth so we can educate our children and ourselves so that we won't be suffering in the financial departments, and so that we can just be on an equal playing field and gain constituency with the social democracy that we patronize and that we built. So cut the check. Thank you for joining me, ADOS. We have to get reparations. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining me. I will be back to talk to you. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do. Thank you. This is Harper, Community First.